either Lacey Peterson and Connor's Law, or you can just Unborn Victims of Violence Act, and it's of 2004. Anyway, this law was passed and signed into law by President Bush. It's a public law, and which recognizes a child in utero as a legal victim if he or she is injured or killed during the commission of any of over 60 listed federal crimes of violence. The law defines the child in utero as a member of the species Homo sapien at any stage of development who is carried in the womb. Now, if you hear that and you've followed Roe versus Wade, the argument is that it's really not a baby in there until it's actually physically born. And this law specifically states that this child has personhood and is defined as a member of the Homo sapien race at any point in its conception to growth. And what a lot of people believe is that this is going to collapse the Roe versus Wade decision. And in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, it says that persons within the meaning of the 14th Amendment, that these persons are now regarded as babies because of this new law. The only thing keeping it from overturning Roe v. Wade is nothing has reached the Supreme Court as of yet. And it's a very interesting law. I encourage everybody to look into it. Just go to Wikipedia and Lacey and Connor's Law, or just put the Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2004 in, and it'll come right up. And further about this, it defines killing of an unborn child as homicide. It provides that intentionally killing an unborn child is punishable under federal law, murder statutes for intentionally killing a human being. It provides an abortion exception clause, now get this, which declines to penalize elective abortions, meaning that anyone that wants to voluntarily kill their baby, it's cool. But if they're killed by someone outside of the mother, and that it is a crime at that point, and it's kind of a oxymoron, or where you're saying one thing and in one sentence, and you're saying it's legal in another. So it creates a whole bunch of dilemmas in the law. In Alabama, there's a law that if a mother doesn't take care of her child while she's pregnant, like she's a crack user or whatever, when the baby is born, the mother is quite often prosecuted for harming the fetus. But if that same mother wants to go to an abortionist, she can have an abortion, and it's premeditated murder. The other one is doing it maybe accidentally or through an addiction, but the one who's committing premeditated murder is seen as legal and just, and the one who is doing it ignorantly is being punished. So it's just mind-boggling to me, to say the least.
And then we have such a, I don't even know the right word for it. We just have such a society where truth has been exchanged for lies, and everything is upside down in a manner of speaking. And then we wonder what's going through these women's head, when they end their baby's life at home alone, and they're charged with murder, and they're looking at spending the rest of their life in prison. We just had that happen not too far from Des Moines last summer. And they're looking at spending the rest of their life in jail, when if they had just gone 20 minutes down the road to Ames, Iowa, and paid a lot of money to somebody to abort their twins, they wouldn't be in jail. And it's an incredibly confusing time in our society where, like you said, there's so many double standards that when you try to apply reason and logic, you can't. There's no reasonable explanation for why you can be charged with murder for the woman for a car accident while the woman is on her way to an abortion clinic. It doesn't make any sense. And I think it's all the more reason why, actually, no, it's all the more reason why we have so much fuel to do the job that we do, because we have to tell the truth of, we've got a society that before the ultrasound came along could easily say, well, it's not a baby, or, you know, Lacey Peterson wanted her baby, and so we'll you know, that's a crime because her baby was wanted. Well, what if her baby wasn't wanted? And obviously her baby wasn't wanted by Scott Peterson, you know, because he ended their lives. And so when you start to define it by, well, I want a baby that's planned, or I want a baby that's wanted, or, you know, I want a baby that's going to be not raised in poverty, or, you know, where do you stop? I want a baby that's a boy and not a girl. I want a baby that, you know, has blue eyes. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous 40 plus years ago. Now that's a reality, you know, and so it's not necessarily about, it really comes down to reclaiming the culture, because you've got so many things which takes work, and that's hard, and that's intense. But as I interact with different people of all ages that have no idea that it's a person growing inside of you, to you or me, that's like, how on earth can you possibly not know that that's a baby? You know, but our society has done such a good job of dehumanizing the life that is in women and boiling it down to a parasite. Well, it's a parasite growing inside me that I have to get rid of. Are you kidding? Like, that's where you started, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's having these conversations across the country at every turn as you can, but also a lot of it comes down to the hard work of not just sharing the truth of the womb, but sharing, you know, quite honestly, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and it comes down to sharing the truth of the gospel, because quite often, not all the time, there are, I know, I personally know some atheists that are very, very pro-life, but oftentimes it comes down to the recognition of their need for a savior, and then the pro-life follows, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, it's not the way that it works for everyone, but for by and large, that's when we see the reality of our need for a savior, and then we recognize that that's our Creator, and that Creator created us in His divine image. Yeah. And somebody is setting out to seek to kill, steal, and destroy.
Right.
And we put our lives on the line to say, no, that's a baby. That woman deserves better. That mother deserves better than abortion. That baby certainly deserves better than a death sentence because of a lack of convenience. And so it's why we do what we do. It's why we keep fighting and telling the truth. Whether in a venue like this, or whether in a conversation like you said with a young woman who's confronted with the reality of an unexpected pregnancy, but her actions led her to that point perhaps. It's conversation by conversation. That's hard work. But that's, you know, that's certainly the abortion industry didn't thrust abortion on us overnight. You look back historically, and they worked at it for decades.
Right.
They worked at it for decades, incrementally, to get us to the point. You know, 1973 and Roe v. Wade didn't just happen. It was decades in the making, finding the right people to turn back the tide on life. And then now here we are in the fallout.
Right. One of the things we need to realize that this battle is not only legal and political. Yes, Planned Parenthood is a very political organization. But most of all, this battle is a spiritual battle. And I'd like to just mention to the Christians out there who are listening to this show, and I don't want to be really hard on Christians, but there's a whole lot of them sitting in churches in the pew that have never taken the gospel or their beliefs outside of the four walls of that church they meet on in once a week. And we need to take what we believe out to the streets and give it to the people that need it. And again, if you see a young lady who is pregnant, even through rape or incest or whatever the case may be, my parents personally dealt with a case in Peru of a 10-year-old little girl that had a baby through incest, and that baby was just the cutest little thing. Yes, it was conceived in sin, and she had to carry that in her little 10-year-old body, but God helped to deliver a healthy baby. And I know personally of a young man, fine-looking young man, 10 years old, who was the product of rape, and he was adopted by a loving family, and he is doing great in a very productive little young man, and I'm sure he's going to grow up and do great things. So I think there's hope that we are going to be able to overturn Roe v. Wade at some point in time. All we need is some grace with regard to the people that are being put onto the Supreme Court. And also, I talked about that collapse clause of the Roe v. Wade. The definition of unborn as Homo sapiens in that law, 18 U.S.C. 1841, does not satisfy the clear plan, meaning, and imitation of the collapse clause. Now, I'm getting some legalese here. Then the clause has no meaning, which would raise doubts whether any other part of Roe or which part has any meaning. Federal law now recognizes the unborn as persons in the whole sense of any meaning or the meaning. Roe, therefore, by its own term, collapses and it must be overruled. When Roe was ruled on, they said that the being or the tissue growing inside the mother was not a baby, was not a human. And in fact, I haven't had a gentleman, Tony Fennell, from Jakobstad, Finland, who on one of the discussion threads I was on recently, said that the baby was no more than a potato, or like it's a living thing, and it's growing inside the mother's womb, but it has no more importance than a potato would in a garden. And I'm just like, it's blowing my mind. And like you said, Jennifer, in the last days, they're going to call evil good and good evil.
Mm-hmm. It's so, it never ceases to amaze me, the things people come up with to say, whether it's a parasite or a potato or, you name it, they boil it down to absolutely nothing of value. And we all started there. I mean, the individuals that are saying, well, it's nothing more than a parasite eating off a toast, or, well, you were a parasite that was eating off your mother's host, or off of the host, your mother. I mean, it doesn't, I think that, to be completely candid, I think that oftentimes it's easy to boil it down to that because it lets you off the hook to live a life that you want to live the way that you want to live it with absolutely no repercussions. And
right.
If I have to take the life of a parasite, then that dehumanizes the value of what you may have created in your in the way that you want to live your life. And we saw
right.
a young man. I can't even. I don't know that young man's the right term to call him. A young man lamenting the passing of the pro-life bills in Texas not too long ago, And immediately after, now